Hey everyone, it's Smita. Today I am really excited because I'm going to be talking about a couple of drugstore brands, specifically two that I think have made some powders that may be good alternatives to the pressed powders from Hourglass. And I have tried Hourglass. I actually have one of their palettes in my collection. I am not going to lie though, I have generally felt pretty let down by the powders from Hourglass, especially these palettes when it comes to inclusivity. And there's been a lot of rhetoric and discussion about Hourglass and inclusivity over the years. I just simply don't think that these powders are inclusive. That's the biggest issue that I have with them. And these powders are iconic for a reason because they genuinely do have a beautiful finish on the skin, something that I think they have done really, really well. But in my opinion, everyone should be able to have that experience. So, I feel like they've been in their own niche for a while where, I haven't seen other brands do anything like them. So it's been really exciting to see that recently there was a palette that came out. So it's been very exciting to see that we may have two alternatives. I don't know, if these are going to be dupes for the Hourglass, but they could be good alternatives. I have the one from Essence, which does look a lot like the Hourglass palette. I'm hoping what I'm going to find with this is that it may be more pigmented. I will say I wish that this came in more than just two shades, maybe down the line. I think that having at least three, even though they're a drugstore brand, would be nice. And the powders from CoverGirl, which actually come in a really nice range. Now, they don't come in a palette, but there are some individual powders that I think may be really good alternatives to the ones from Hourglass. And I do also want to mention that Essence has come out with some new eyeshadows that I really want to test out and just see how they perform. So I'm going to try those on as well because these do look pretty, especially this silver one. It looks like it's extra sparkly, and I'm always looking for good sparkly shadows that are affordable options. So I think what I'm going to do is apply the different formulas side by side. So I'm going to have the Hourglass on one side and I'm going to put the other ones on the other side one at a time. Starting off with this Hourglass palette. This was a holiday palette that came out over a year ago. And I'm going to dip into one of the blushes. I think I'm going to dip into this blush here. This palette includes kind of like a blush, bronzer, and a finishing powder. So starting off with that shade here, I'm just going to pop that on the cheek. And like I said, I have medium deep skin tone. I just feel like if you have a deep skin tone, especially, I've asked my husband when I apply these what he thinks of them, and he has always told me that they're very subtle. And, there's nothing wrong with that, but my issue is that when I've seen people with lighter skin use their palettes, that's not the effect that they get. So I feel like, I've had people tell me, well, that's the effect that Hourglass is going for, but that's not the experience that everyone is having with the powders, which is my biggest problem. All right, that is what the blush looks like built up. Now I'm going to dip in to this kind of bronzy toned shade here. Picked up a bunch on my brush, and I'm just going to apply that kind of underneath where I place the blush and up into that blush. I'm just going to take a little bit and apply it where I would typically place my bronzer, a little bit on the jawline. All right, and I actually don't know if this palette has a finishing powder, but I'm going to use this shade as kind of a highlighting shade. Just a little bit right on the top of the cheekbone. Something that I do really like about the Hourglass formula is how seamlessly these blend into the skin. I feel like this has been something that is very unique about the Hourglass formula. All right, and here is what the first cheek looks like. Now I'm gonna go ahead and dip into the Essence palette. So here's what it looks like. This is the deeper of the two shades. I already feel like just from looking at it, I have a feeling that it's gonna be more pigmented. I am gonna try to go in with a little bit of a lighter hand. Oh yeah, that's one dip into the pan. Just work that into the skin. All right, here's what the Essence blush looks like, and that is just with one dip into the pan. Now, right off the bat, I will say that these formulas don't feel identical, but I have to say that that looks really beautiful on the skin, and I really appreciated that it is more pigmented. All right, and the next shade we're gonna go in with is this bronzy shade. Again, I can tell from the way that product picked up on the brush that this is going to be more pigmented. And I'm going to go ahead and apply it on the same areas of the face as I did the Hourglass. All right, and the last powder I'm going to use is this kind of champagne leaning highlight. I think that this one is beautiful, but I'm not going to use it because I used a kind of more champagne leaning one for my first look. I'm just going to build that up a little bit. That is beautiful. It doesn't look like sparkly. It has a seamless look on the skin. All right, and here is a little comparison of what the two sides look like with the Essence on this side and the Hourglass on this side. I want to say, honestly, yes, the Essence is giving similar vibes to the Hourglass, but the Essence is packing more punch. Now, do I think it's, completely as seamless as the Hourglass in terms of the finely milled nature of the powders, the ease of applying it to the skin? Maybe not quite as much, but honestly, I like the end result of this one better, especially for brown skin, compared to the Hourglass. I think the last thing that I'm going to do is use these eyeshadows from Essence, starting off with this brown one. Now this one kind of feels like it's sort of a satin finish, but almost has like a cream to powder kind of feel to it. And as some of you may have seen, I compared their potted shadows to the Charlotte Tilbury, and I thought they were almost spot on dupe. So that is what made me excited to try more shadows from Essence. I think that this is a beautiful one and done type of shade. All right, and then for the second shadow that I'm going to use is this silver leaning one. I wonder how it's going to pick up on my brush. Usually with these type of sparkly toppers, I think they do better with your finger. Actually, no, I'm just going to use my finger and put a little bit on the inner portion just to kind of amp it up a little bit. And just because I want to see how these apply and how these work. And then I'm going to use that same shade and use that as an inner corner highlight and as, ooh, so pretty, as a little bit of a brow bone pop of sparkle. All right, and here is the completed look. What I'm gonna do is come back after a wear test, and for the second demo, I'm going to do a side-to-side comparison of CoverGirl and Hourglass. All right, I'm back. I've had my makeup on for, I would say, over 9 hours at this point, so it's been a pretty good wear test. I want to take a look at how everything has worn, especially the Essence, because we want to see, is this good quality makeup and does it last? And Honestly, I am very happy with how it's worn. The blush still looks so nice. You can still see the highlighter very well on my cheek. This is the way that the Hourglass has worn. So we already started off with this side being less pigmented than this side. So I said before, I think the Essence is more brown skin friendly when it comes to providing more pigmentation, more like the effect that I think I wanted with the Hourglass powders. And I'm, like I said, I'm very happy with how it's worn. If you were to really get down to it and say, like, which side looks more airbrushed? Is there like a more seamless way in which my makeup has worn? I would say, you know what, you probably do get a more kind of seamless, more luxurious experience with the Hourglass than you do with the Essence. But in my opinion, it's probably not worth the difference, in my own opinion, because I feel like the Essence palette performed super beautifully and it just packed more punch, especially for brown skin. So really, really happy with this. And if you were curious about it, I think this may be worth your while, especially if you do have brown skin and you were feeling a little bit let down by what the Hourglass powders were giving. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is the eyeshadows. I haven't, like I said, I haven't touched them up. I have not experienced any creasing whatsoever. I feel like they look fantastic. And this is my first time trying this formula from Essence. Like I said, I tried the cream shadows in a previous video where I did a dupe video comparison with Charlotte Tilbury, but these are the mono shadows. This is the mono glitter. I believe they have a gold one as well. I haven't seen that there's like more shades than that. There's just a couple. And then this one is called the mono eyeshadow pearly. So it's not like intended to be as sparkly, but I would say it's a beautiful day-to-day shade, has a beautiful sheen on the skin. And if you were like, you know, you wanted to try the Essence shadows that were, you know, potted, but just cream shadows don't work for you, I feel like you'll get a similar experience with these, or similar look, but without that cream finish. This may work better for you. So maybe something that you want to check out if, you know, if you felt like the cream shadows weren't for you. Okay, I removed my makeup and redid my base on this side. I know it's not perfect because I've had the Hourglass on for quite some time, but what I really wanted to do is just give these CoverGirl powders a try. Just so you know, these, again, are much more affordable than the Hourglass, and they actually look more like the Hourglass powders than the Essence because they have that marbled appearance. And I heard that these are also made in Italy, the powders themselves, but I really just want to see how they apply to the skin. So I'm going to start off with the bronzer that I have. And this, by the way, is the shade Caramel Truffle. So 320 Caramel Truffle. And again, I just want to see what this gives, especially pigmentation and finish, since I'm not going to be doing a wear test. So what I want to see is it more pigment out of the gate? How does it build? And what is the finish? And I would say, and this is not the deepest shade, by the way. I do believe that there is deeper than Caramel Truffle. But I would say less pigmented than the Essence, but more pigmented than the Hourglass on first initial application. Yeah, I feel like this is just giving a little bit more when it comes to bronzing, and it's building well. Okay, add a little bit to the jawline. All right, here is what the bronzer looks like fully applied. I am actually really excited to dip into this blush. This is called Berry Punch, and this one just looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. It's a purple tone blush, so I'm very curious how that is going to look. That's beautiful. And I do feel like, you know, these are blending very easy. I would say similar to how the Hourglass blend. And like I said, they're more buildable than the Essence. So maybe less pigmented out of the gate than the Essence, but they build up beautifully. And they do look seamless on the skin. All right, and the last thing that I have from CoverGirl is actually new. This is their finishing powder, and there's quite a nice shade range for this. There's no highlighter. I truly hope they do decide to extend this range and make some of these powders as a highlighter, because I do feel like the Hourglass highlighters are really pretty. But what I want to do is just, again, see how this looks on my skin. This is the shade 520 Cinnamon Roll, which I felt like was going to be the right shade for me. And I'm just going to put it in some of the areas that I tend to get shine. So my T-zone. So I'm not exactly sure how I would use this in my routine in the context of my loose powder, but what I might use this for is like a kind of on the go, like almost a touch-up powder. If I have some of my, like if I get shiny throughout the day, I just feel like this really applied beautifully, and I really love the effect that that had on my skin. And so these powders, you know, individually, because you do have to buy these individually, are pricier than Essence, and in general, CoverGirl is pricier than Essence. But I would say that my experience with these was really, really great. I feel like I got a luxury experience. Obviously, you don't get the luxury packaging, but the performance of these powders was really fantastic, and I want to try these in more shades. I think that this blush comes in more shades, so very intrigued about this, because that just applied so beautifully, built up beautifully. Love a buildable blush like this. Now that I've had a chance to go through everything, I would love to know what you think about some of these new launches from Essence and CoverGirl. If you have tried the Hourglass powders and felt either let down by what you got for the price, or the shades that you got, and if you'd been keen to try other products like them. I do feel like, you know, probably the closest experience that I had was with the CoverGirl, but I gotta say the Essence looked beautiful on my skin, wore really well, and I love the fact that you get multiple products in one palette, similar to the way that the Hourglass palettes are designed. I would love to see them do even more shades, and I hope that CoverGirl decides to continue to expand their range. As always, I really hope you found this video helpful. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.